What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Heated Shenanigans Podcast, the only podcast bringing you the heat each and every single week. And guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, I am indeed joined by former AEW and WWE star Mr. Bobby Fish of the Undisputed Era. It is a great honor to have you with us today, Bobby. Bobby, how are things going
Thank you,
for you?
sir. Things are going good. I wasn't entirely sure that this was going to have a video element to it. I'm probably barely recognizable to people. At this point, I shaved off my mustache and my beard because I wasn't working for a while, and it's been, honestly, probably 20 years since I've not had much under my lip. Um, my stepdaughter hasn't looked at me for a week. So yes, I am in the process of growing it back, so my wife doesn't call the police when I walk in the.
Well, one thing we'll kick this off here with Bobby. A lot of people may not know, and it's time that they find out. You do have your own podcast as well,
Do
sir. What is it about? What type of content can fans expect to see?
it's dare I say it's full of shenanigans. Um,
That's a good way to put it.
yeah, it's a couple friends of mine that I grew up with. They're in my hometown, and we talk about anything and everything. It's very wrestling oriented, but at the same time, we cover faith. We cover life. Both of them have their own unique story, and we just kind of shoot the shit, I suppose. We do have a guest coming on for the first time. Will be upcoming this week. We'll have none other than Scotty Too Hottie. I'm
Very
going to be
nice.
on the podcast, do a little interview with him, which I'm super interested to do. I've known Scotty since I started with NXT. He was coaching there, and just always, man, what a great dude! And talk about a frigging career. Um, he was around before wrestling was cool, and now that it is cool, no pun intended, it's Scotty's still cool. So
Well, that's awesome. And where can people find your podcast,
it
Bobby?
is on any platform. My friend Dennis that does it with me, he works for iHeartRadio, and he's got it on just about every platform. So pretty much anywhere that you go to download your podcasts, it would be there. It's called the Undisputed Podcast with Bobby Fish. Um, and we got to figure out what day each week we're gonna drop it. We're 3 episodes in, but it is a weekly um, podcast. We just got to figure out which day we're gonna drop it consistently each week. But it's weekly.
Well, that's good. I know the importance of a good, consistent
Yes.
schedule, and I'm excited for you to build upon your podcast. You're only a couple episodes
Yeah.
in, but it's definitely worth a listen, guys.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I've thought about doing it for a while, and this has certainly exceeded my expectations. And like I said, Scotty will be the first guest that we have on, and I'm really interested to see where that goes. I like having conversations with people, and to be honest, I'm sick of hearing my own voice. I want to hear somebody else's.
Well, another thing that's been in the news recently, sir, you have challenged CM Punk to a mixed martial arts fight.
Mhm.
What's going on with that, sir?
Well, specifically, I pretty much said whatever discipline he'd like to go with. we could kickbox, we can box, we could do MMA because that's what he did with the UFC. I mean, whatever he fashions himself as, let's see. I mean, why not? Uh, I think with the recent proceedings there and with my former employer, um, it appears that Phil is interested in getting physical. So I mean, what we do in pro wrestling is certainly physical. Phil and I had a match. I did the honors for Phil. Um, Phil probably could have showed a little more appreciation for the fact that there's a guy who will legitimately whoop his ass. But do the honors for somebody, and I don't know. I mean, he was less than gracious. So put your money where your mouth is.
So I had seen the YouTube training videos with you and Malachi or Alistair Black, however you want to
Yeah.
refer to him as, and you've trained in MMA for many
hmm
years. I was kind of curious, what's the difference between training for an MMA fight versus training to be a professional wrestler?
Well, so both are similar in the regard that like you're spinning a lot of plates. So in pro wrestling, I think based somewhat off of the fact that we control certain variables, you're trying to do a lot at the same time. So that's why I use the term, the phrase spinning plates. And then in MMA, it's similar in that the way that mixed martial arts has evolved since, like, let's say UFC one, and I mean, obviously it's evolved a ton since then, but even just a few years ago, guys have gotten so good at everything. So the day and age when a specialist could come in and dominate with his art, so to speak. Those days are kind of done. So with MMA at this point, you got to check all the boxes, and if you don't, if you leave one unchecked, I think that's where you get exposed for whatever you're weakest in. So I'd say that the biggest similarity is spinning multiple plates. I'd say the biggest difference is obviously there's a one is competition, one is performance. Dare I say the competition takes place in the locker room. You've got a lot of locker room politicians who that's where a lot of the actual warfare takes place. The bullshit, you know.
I've heard a few
Sure.
stories,
Yeah.
somewhat recent,
Yeah.
but um, if you had to give a prediction, if CM Punk was to accept your fight, how long would you think it would last? How many rounds?
Um. First, first and foremost, like he's not gonna accept. I put it out there as more of an invitation than even a challenge, because dare I say, like I'm kind of a bully for even putting it out there because it there is no real matchup. Like there's not, and I'm not Hoist Gracie. I'm not you know um I'm not John Jones by any means. I'm not Anderson Silva, but like when it comes to Phil Brooks and me in a legitimate competition, um, I laid my shoulders down for that man because what we do is pro wrestling, and the person who was paying me paid me to do that. And I don't get it mixed up. I don't get it twisted. I know what my job is. I've been doing this 20 years. But if Phil and I were to enter into an actual competition, money or not, like I'm whooping his ass, and if it goes more than 2 minutes, I mean, really, we're not getting out of the first round. Truly.
I could see it based off his prior experiences in the UFC. That's about the average
Yeah,
length.
I mean, I kind of, if he wasn't such a schmuck, um, I would feel bad putting the invitation out there the way that I did, because truly, like I feel like a bully because there is no physical, like I would have zero fear, like I won't even, I'm not even nervous about it. Like it would be, if somebody said to me, "Hey, listen, you gotta do this fight on 1 foot," I'd consider it because it would level the playing field somewhat. Because from what I saw, him in the UFC, and I've been doing martial arts since I was 8 years old. It's a lifelong pursuit for me. I love it. It's why I put it in my pro wrestling. It's why I think guys like Bryan Danielson or Kyle O'Reilly, who I'm obviously very biased towards, put it in their pro wrestling, is because pro wrestling, we get to pick our style, and we get to bring a taste of us to pro wrestling, to what we do. So, do something that you're familiar with. So I'm very familiar with it. I've been doing it since I was 8 years old. Dare I say, Phil picked it up late in life. And, if I'm not being polite about it, frankly, he sucks at it. So keep it out of your pro wrestling. Like, he's not a bad pro wrestler. I'll give him his due. Like, he's not a bad pro wrestler, but when it comes to martial arts, like, I don't know, you watch a match with him and Bryan Danielson, eh, I, the difference is glaring to me. The match with him and the difference is glaring to me. I mean, I had him in a Muay Thai clinch and was hitting him with knees, and he was blocking him with his forearms. Like, that's crazy. Like, I don't, who taught you that? It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever, and to watch that back, it was painful for me to watch because it was like, okay, it's obvious, like you don't know what you're doing, and it is performance, but at the end of, like, we're trying to get people to suspend their disbelief, so it'd be like throwing a bad punch. Like, why are you asking me to put over your bunk ass martial arts? It's not good and it's not believable. Like, when meanwhile you could just wrestle, we could go out and you could do a headlock takeover, sunset flip, tackle drop down leapfrog, and we're fine. Why? Like, I don't know your lane and stay the fuck in it.
Um, so speaking again of professional wrestling here, as we'll transcend
Yes,
over
sir.
here, um, what would you say is your favorite story you have seen told in a wrestling ring, be it by you or one of your colleagues?
um like the story told in the,
Inside
okay,
the
the
ring.
psychology.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. That is a good question. I do remember, I can't remember. I know it was Mustache Mountain and Kyle and Roddy. It was when I was out. I had my ACL surgery, and I don't remember which takeover it was, but they told an incredible story at this takeover. I believe it culminated in, I don't know if it was Trent getting the hot tag or if it was, um, oh shit, why can't I remember his name? That's horrible of me right now. Um, oh my god, that's gonna, too many concussions. Um, Tyler. There we go. Tyler. I got it. I got it.
You got it. You
Um,
got it.
I don't remember who got the hot tag, but I do remember, like, the build to that hot tag was done so well. And obviously I'm biased to Kyle and Roddy. But they really, they they played it so well, and the story they told was awesome. I off the top of my head, because I didn't know that question was coming my way. I that was one of the ones that sticks out as being a great story, just telling a great story. If you have a chance to go back and check that one out, it was one of the takeovers, and it was Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain, and it was awesome.
I've definitely watched a lot of your work from NXT just because I really feel that was the golden age of NXT. I mean, the roster was, and not that they don't have a good roster now, but the depth at the time, it was you, Adam,
Hmm.
Kyle, Shinsuke was in there, and Joe, and just so many talented individuals to their craft. What would you say is your most memorable moment from WWE?
Um, so I'll first say, like, I think their roster now is just they're young. It's a young roster. So the comparison is somewhat unfair because there was way more seasoning with those guys that you mentioned, myself being one of them prior to that. And I remember even before we got there, watching one of the takeovers, and it was Fergal or Finn Balor, and Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens, Rami, like these guys were all and Shinsuke. And I remember watching it and just thinking, like, man, this is like similar to what you said, just like a golden era. And like that was the coolest place for you to be was NXT at that point. Not Raw, not SmackDown, not New Japan. It was NXT. And so, like, fast forward maybe like a year later, those guys had moved on for the most part. And then we were getting that opportunity. And it was kind of surreal. Um, the whole thing there was somewhat surreal for us to come in, me and Kyle and Adam at the same time. Roddy was already there, but Kyle and I thought, like, yeah, they might keep us as a team, but never did we think that they would put the three of us together. And then, to add a fourth member to the group and for it to be Roderick Strong, like, it's just kind of waiting for somebody to come in and be like, nah, we're just fucking with you. This isn't really so it was an awesome time. So to answer your question, favorite moment would probably be I think this one, maybe the second War Games. I loved
That was a
I
damn
loved
good
all
one.
the War Games, I really did. But I remember that second one. The first one was like the newness of the whole thing, and and Roddy was one of our opponents actually. But it was like kind of getting your bearings and figuring out like what we can do with this thing. And it was super cool for me being a fan of the NWA Crockett years, to be in a War Games. But by that second year, I think we were able to really sink our teeth into it and kind of get creative with it and tell. I feel like that was the one that had the most story told in it. Um, so yeah, that's definitely one of the highlights.
Say, I'm not sure if you might have heard the comparisons from meet and greets, or I don't know how much you are online or anything of that
Hmm.
nature, but what you guys had an undisputed era with you, Kyle, and Adam. So many people refer to that as the greatest modern day faction in wrestling history, and it's deserved, 100% deserved. How does it make you feel that you guys are compared to the likes of the Horsemen, the NWO, Evolution?
It's it's ridiculous. So for me, I grew up in upstate New York, so WWF was what we got. Uh, and then
Mhm.
somewhere in my like early teen years, we started to get the NWA, which would later become WCW. I was introduced to Dusty Rhodes and the Four Horsemen and Sting, and that's the first place I saw Muda. Um, but the Horsemen were such a huge part of that. And I mean, I wore out the War Games VHS tapes. Like, I mean, I wore them out. I bought them. They came in the mail. I watched them constantly. So to be compared even remotely to the Horsemen, and then to be, synonymous at this point with this generation's version of the War Games, again, it's just super surreal, and I just feel blessed, and I'm so thankful to Hunter and to Sean for seeing that vision for us. Because, like I said, if you had asked us, like, I mean, maybe we'd have picked it, but who thinks they're going to get to write their script that way? And I know Hunter and Sean were big fans of that same era in wrestling. So the fact that they saw, me and three of my best friends, as like, as that, and they made us, what some would call like their horsemen and put us in the War Games. Like, it just, if you told the 14-year-old me that this was going to happen, there's no, I don't know what you're talking about.
As somebody who is extremely decorated in tag team wrestling, and you've had several tag team matches that have been some of the finest work that I've ever
Uh,
seen in professional
Thank you,
wrestling.
sir.
You're welcome. Um, what do you think, from your experience, makes a good tag team, and what is some good tag team psychology that seems lost in today's wrestling?
So I think good tag team wrestling is both teams understanding their role. I think it's best, obviously, when you have a heel and a face. I think in modern day professional wrestling, heel and face, I think it needs to evolve a little bit. I don't think it can be what it was years ago. Like, everything needs to evolve, and you don't have the white cowboy hat and the black cowboy hat anymore. It's way too nuanced to be that, and so, like, even the tag match I brought up before, like, there were certain elements of the Undisputed Era that would have, years ago, been kind of babyface, but like Roddy and Kyle were firmly the heels in that match with Mustache Mountain. But I just think it's way more nuanced these days. So there's quite a bit more gray area, I think, that is relevant to today's pro wrestling. I do think, though, that a good tag match still has to have strong a strong heel presence. You know, I think somebody needs to get their ass whooped. If there's not somebody getting their ass whooped for whatever reason, or two somebodies, or you know then there's no. And I don't think, I think the hot tag thing is somewhat overdone, as crazy as that sounds. But, like, I think it's become so formulaic. Is that even a word? uh I think you know what I'm trying to say.
I know where we're going
Yeah.
with.
I think that to deviate from the quote unquote formula makes things different, and different is good. Different is never bad. Um, so I think I think maybe we could do ourselves some favors by not making everything about that hot tag anymore, but make it something that's looks like a hot tag, and we're getting to the hot tag, and then you interrupt it somewhere. I don't know. I think making a left or a right where you would have normally gone straight, there's nothing wrong with that these days. Um, and what was the second part of the question?
What is something that you feel is lost in the psychology of tag team wrestling
Um, I
in
I
today's era?
think so. We wrestled a lot of young teams. Um, well, not a lot, but we did. We wrestled some younger guys recently, and I think people. have forgot the importance of selling. None of this shit matters if you don't sell it, because
I 100% agree.
fans don't actually feel it, and most fans aren't gonna know what a body slam feels like anyway. Because if you get in a real fight, like, you're gonna get headlocked and maybe punched in the face and maybe you fall on the ground, but you're not gonna get body slammed or suplexed or any of those things. So nothing that we're doing out there is relatable. Um, and you've got a lot of younger talent, and I don't want to sound like the old codger, but that's exactly what I'm sounding like. Um, these young, um, yes sir,
Whippersnappers.
yes sir, the young whippersnappers. They People have, they're too concerned about what they're going to hit offensively, and you forget about the fact that it means so much more. Like, you can go out and have a match and, like, you hit some cool offense at the end, great. But it means so much more if you spent the beginning of that match selling your ass off and making those people believe, even for a second, like, ooh, I know this shit is, what it is, but that looked fucked up. And like, if you can get somebody even for a second on that, and then you add some really believable selling to it, by the time you get to the hot tag, or by the time you get to your cool offense, they're going to be so ready for it that it's almost not going to matter what you do. So if you layer cool offense on top of, they'd be happy for an atomic drop, like, that's when you really blow the roof off the building. And I think nowadays you got people that are, putting the cart before the horse. They're not selling. And it's like we lose them 6 minutes in. We're going 16 and we're losing them 6 minutes in because you're not selling what I'm doing.
So you definitely want to create that emotional attachment, because you want to sell to the guy in the cheap seats, because if they can't see that pain and anguish
Yeah.
on your face, you're really doing a disservice to the whole match.
Yeah. And it's, sell it. Like I said, the people don't actually feel it. And if what they're seeing they can't necessarily relate to, like, oh, I remember when I got punched in the face, like, we don't just punch each other in the face. We do these things, like, nobody knows how it feels to take a falcon arrow off the top rope. No audience is
Painful.
watching, knows how that feels. So they can assume it hurts, but they don't know. So, like, if we rush and get up there on the top rope and we just come off and do it and then move on to the next thing, like, what the hell did we just do that for? Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Who would you say, over the course of your career, be it in a singles match or in a tag match, you've had the best chemistry in the ring with? Just when you know that that's the guy or guy standing across the ring from you on that night, it's going to be magic.
There's been a few. Jay Lethal is a guy who I remember in Ring of Honor. I don't know that I could have had a bad match with Jay. I really don't. I mean, we had two or three really good ones, and then I remember seeing one that was a triple threat with Dalton Castle, and Dalton, was gaining steam but hadn't truly arrived yet. And Dalton was over in that match, and the way that we were able to put it together was really kind of cool and innovative. But just the chemistry that I've had with Jay Lethal was something that I didn't necessarily anticipate, and it's always been spot on.
So, what would you say over the course of your career is one lesson that you didn't expect to learn in professional wrestling, and how did it affect your career after you learned that lesson?
Um, hmm. I would say, especially early on in my career, my first big break was working for Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan, and at that time, Noah was probably the number one company in Japan. Masawa and the exodus of a lot of the, I believe it was the All Japan like top tier guys had left and come over and they formed Noah, and it was, I believe, called like a King's Road. Eddie Kingston would be able to comment on this better than I. But I believe it was the King's Road style, and that's really what made Noah what it was. And Noah, like some of their main events were like hour long Broadways and Japanese style, just chop fests and head drops, and it's no no secret as to why the injuries mounted up for a lot of guys over there. But that style was, um, an introduction to me when I first started working for Noah. And when you go over, you're the odd man out, or you're the young guy coming in, and you're a foreigner, and so you're, to put it politely, like you're getting the shit kicked out of you more times than not. And Ring of Honor was kind of a big thing then, and I think that you had a lot of guys doing the what, for lack of a better term, the King's Road style without really understanding it. And that kind of became the Ring of Honor style. And I think the Ring of Honor style evolved over the years, but like at that time, I know I will say for myself wholeheartedly, I was under the impression that like you went hard every night and you beat the shit out of people and you got the shit beat out of you and you didn't complain. It was stiff as fuck. I think some evidence of that is later on, like Nigel and Brian Danielson, a couple of their encounters, headbutting uh, the pole. I just think that too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. And I think the lesson that I learned working for Noah was that, being exposed to that style, that they didn't do it every night. You know, there was a thing in Japan called red light fever, and that was the red light of the TV camera. So when the TV camera was on, yeah, you beat the shit out of each other, and that's what everybody saw. So I think you had people here in the States that, because you see the stuff that's televised, they thought, oh, well, they go that hard every night. And meanwhile, those guys got to work 5 days a week. So they're not going that hard in the country towns. They're not going that hard. So if they wrestle 5 times that week, they're going that hard once, maybe. Maybe they're not going hard at all that week, and they're only going to go hard at the end of the next week. So that was a lesson that I had to learn. And I think I had a few beatings that came my way from different Japanese workers to let me know, hey, kid, um, there
Slow it the
you
fuck
go.
down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Slow down, asshole.
When we were talking, setting this up, you had mentioned this is the first time, and I think you said 6 years, that you hadn't been affiliated to a major company. There is so much out there to do. What are you most excited about for your future coming up?
Um, I I need to get reacquainted with the indie scene. I don't really like. I don't know who this person is or that person. I've taken some dates, and people have asked me who I wanted to work, and they would go through, run off 5 or 6 names, and I don't know a single person. So I need to get reacquainted with what's out there, and what's new, and what's happening at this point. I would say that I've had some conversation with some New Japan people, and that excites me quite a bit. I really I miss my time there, and I know that they with New Japan Strong being something here in the States, and I think we got some of those dates coming up, so I'm really looking forward to that.
And I think you've got a bright future ahead of you, Bobby. I mean, you're Money in the Ring. You're a sure hand, and it's not going to be long, man. There's going to be all types of people lining up to get a piece of Bobby
Yeah,
Fish.
well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. I guess I'm excited. I'm as excited as an unemployed person can be. Yeah,
It's understandable. It's
yeah.
understandable. Do you do you watch a lot of professional wrestling? Like, I mean, you do it
Yes, sir.
obviously, but do you like to watch it in your free time?
I still do a little bit. One of the things that brings me to it a lot now, my stepdaughter's 9, and since um, her mom and I have been together, and it's been years, and we're married, and she's gotten more into wrestling. And in the beginning, I think it was kind of a passing thing for her, but now she's like, man, she is such a Bianca Belair fan. And so she actually likes to watch it. And a lot of times, like, that's a way for her and I to spend time together. And it's interesting because, um, like, that's how I started watching wrestling was with my dad, you know? It's just it's really interesting how things come full circle like that, and and her dad's a huge part of her life and everything, and he's a great man, and I don't know, but I don't think they watch wrestling. They might, um, but I know that that's something that her and I kind of share, and it's man, it's pretty cool. So that brings me to watching it more than I probably would otherwise. But I think otherwise, like I keep up on it enough. Um, I've tried to watch Gunther and Sheamus 3 times today from the Clash at the Castle pay per view, and I've watched different parts of the match, like I said, 3 times. And they've all been really good, so I've wanted to see it all the way through, and something keeps interrupting me. Like last night, I fell asleep, that interrupted it. But then, like before we got on this call, I had to take the dog out, and then he was taking too long, and then, so I missed like the whole, last quarter of the match. I was like, God, So, yeah, I definitely still watch for sure.
Okay. Well, before we go ahead and wrap up this episode, Bobby, I want you to again remind people where they can find your
Hmm.
podcast and when they can expect the next episode.
We will be recording again next week. We just dropped an episode 2 days ago. We'll be recording again next week. We'll have Scotty Too Hottie on. That will probably drop, I'm gonna say, Wednesday. And then from there, it'll either be every Wednesday or we'll pick a day for sure that it's going to be, and it's on really all platforms, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, because I know that that's where my buddy Dennis works. And he said pretty much every platform that you can get it on. Um, we are available, and then or we will be. We'll be dropping episodes. Episode 4 will be this coming week, and on Instagram, I am the Bobby Fish. On Twitter, I am the Bobby Fish. I can be reached through any of those avenues for bookings and whatnot. My agent handles most of that, but if you contact me directly, I can get you sorted out with him. And There was something else, but I can't remember. Oh, September 24th, Prestige Wrestling, Crown Point, Indiana. Be
Oh,
wrestling for no, I will be wrestling for Black Label Pro Wrestling on the 20th, and
hell
then
yeah.
the 25th will be Prestige. Or I might have those backwards. I don't need my agent. I need him. I need Frank. Frank, when they, Frank doesn't get hit in the head, at least not as much as I do.
All right. Well, Bobby, I want to thank you so much for the time that you've given me for the
Thank
podcast today. You have been a
you.
magnificent guest. And guys, make sure to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We really appreciate the love and support you guys have been giving us. It's allowing us to get out there, get our names out there, so we can bring you guys like Bobby Fish, Rikishi, Jake the Snake. We got a lot more coming up, and we want to thank you guys for all the love and support. And we will see you guys on the next
Very
episode.
cool.